Now, UKIP is gathering for its conference in Birmingham today. Bet most of you didn't know that, but you do now.
I did.
Not you, Joko. You know everything. What's their biggest achievement, you think? Coming second in the last elections for the European Parliament, they won 12 seats. They got 12 seats in Strasbourg or Brussels, depending where it meets. Or is there a big achievement preventing the Conservatives from winning a majority at the last general election? There's a theory that UKIP cost the Tories about 20 seats because the Eurosceptic vote was split. And that's got some people thinking about a ceasefire between the two parties in time for the next election. Our Adam's been investigating.
Could Nigel Farage help David Cameron win the next general election? Well, he just might, in places like Hendon. In this part of North London, the Tory MP has a majority over Labour of about 100. But 1,000 people voted for UKIP 2 years ago, so securing those votes could help the Conservatives cling on here. Hendon is also the home of the RAF Museum, the perfect place to explore an idea raised by a Tory big gun, a non-aggression pact between the two parties.
I'd like to move to a position where people who vote UKIP and people who vote Conservative at the moment can support the same candidates. Now, precisely what form that takes is obviously going to be decided way above my pay grade. I mean, at one end of the scale are local deals, at the other is a full merger, as happened in Canada, where they'd also had a split of the centre-right with disastrous consequences. In a way, that's kind of secondary. The important thing is to get the policy right, which is trusting the people to have a say on this vital issue.
But there are some big factors that might stop that idea getting off the ground, such as...
What if UKIP voters don't automatically become Conservative voters? There's evidence to suggest some of them would switch their support to other parties instead, which would do the Tories no favours at all. And then what if tying up with UKIP actually puts off other people and it ends up costing the Conservatives votes? And what if too few people in either party really want to go through with it?
The idea of a pact doesn't appeal to UKIP's newest recruit, who was unveiled this week, Lord Stevens. He was kicked out of the Tories in the mid-2000s for writing a letter urging people to vote for UKIP.
I think the problem the Conservatives have is that UKIP is now becoming a serious political party. I'm not necessarily sure that UKIP would agree with it. And what would the promise be? An in-out referendum? Well, the Conservatives have already agreed to have a referendum on Lisbon, and when they came to power, they tore up that agreement and said that circumstances had changed.
So it's unlikely the UKIP battle bus will be dishing out Conservative leaflets anytime soon. More probable is a repeat of the much less exciting situation from the last general election, where UKIP simply didn't run in seats where the Tory candidate thought broadly along the same lines as Mr Farage.
Adam Fleming reporting there. We've been joined by the Deputy Leader of UKIP, Paul Nuttall, and by Katie Hopkins. She's the former apprentice contestant who's announced she's going to stand in the next European elections for a new party called the I Want a Referendum Party. It's not clear what their policy is, but it's called I Want a Referendum Party. Welcome to you both. Toby, I want to come to you first. Is UKIP much of a threat to the Tories at the next general election?
I think it remains to be seen, but the prognosis is that UKIP will top the poll in the 2014 parliamentary elections. And if the Conservatives...
European parliamentary elections.
European parliamentary elections. If the Conservatives are still trailing Labour by between 10 and 15 points at that point, I think Cameron will certainly come under a lot of pressure at the autumn party conference to come to some sort of accommodation with
And do you have an idea what, in your view, what that sort of accommodation should be?
I think that an electoral pact between the two parties whereby the Conservatives promise not to oppose UKIP in, say, a dozen constituencies and UKIP promise not to oppose the Tories in any of the others, I think that's probably unlikely. And in a sense, it's unlikely to happen because UKIP, as a price of making that deal, would insist that Cameron commit the party to an in-out EU referendum in the next Parliament. But if he does that, that'll shoot the UKIP fox anyway to a great extent, so there'll be no need for a pact.
Would you be up for an electoral pact with the Conservatives if it was on offer?
I think you never say never in politics. And I think it all depends on where we are in 2015. If we come off the back of the European elections, we've won and we're still polling around double digits, I think the Conservatives will find it very difficult not to come to us and offer us some sort of deal, because it will be clear then that they can't form an outright majority without UKIP support.
But at the moment, in the parliamentary elections, not the European, but in the Westminster elections, you're essentially a spoiler. You have a lot of seats in Strasbourg, but you have no seats in Westminster, though you may affect the results for the Tories in some constituencies. I mean, surely if you're to make a breakthrough into Westminster, you need something along the lines that Toby Young's suggesting, where you get a clear run in a certain number of constituencies.
Well, that may well be the case, but we have policies out there, Andrew, which appeal to the Conservative Party and their grassroots in particular. We're in favour of grammar schools. We want a fair but firm immigration policy. We say zero tolerance on crime. These all appeal to the grassroots of the Conservative Party. And let's not forget, it's a party which is in trouble because it's halved in membership since Cameron's become the leader.
All right. Now, Katie Hopkins. Why don't you just join UKIP?
Because I think people are tired of parties that promise a lot and don't deliver. We've been hearing, we're going to give you a referendum and we don't get it. We're going to give you a referendum, we don't get it. Now there might be a pact, now there might be a strategic alliance. We've got the coalition already. Now UKIP might join forces. Why not throw the Green Party in there as well? We stand for something very simple, very clear. We demand a referendum, and in the Euro elections there will be a candidate fielded in every region of England, and people can go into that election booth and they can cross where it says we demand a referendum. And we think it's time. It's not the career politicians that tell us what we think, but we think it's time that we let the people decide.
But is that your only policy?
No, it's not our only policy at all. We're fighting on much broader issues as well. Things like traveller sites. We're fighting for small businesses to obtain grant funding. We're fighting on all number of levels.
So you like UKIP then? You've got other policies too?
We have got other policies too, of course, but our point is that we are a very clear choice. People have said 30% in the latest YouGov poll that they would prefer to have a group of people, a movement that is solely for we demand a referendum, and that's what we're going to provide.
Let me ring Toby and then you, Paul.
Well, I mean, I completely sympathise with Katie's cause. I'm a Eurosceptic, but because of that, I don't think what you're proposing is a good idea. I mean, I want UKIP to top the poll in 2014 in the European elections, to put as much pressure as possible on our two major parties. If you're fielding candidates against UKIP in these constituencies during the European election, you're going to divide the anti-EU vote.
This is a very political party kind of perspective that you've both got, because I see you shaking your head as well. But what I would say is that I'm much more representative of what people are doing on their sofas.
Just become Nigel Farage's apprentice. More fun than being Alan Sugar's apprentice.
I don't want to be his apprentice. Thank you very much.
Katie, this is a bit of, the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front, and I will put it to you, that actually if you're fighting for a referendum, you're fighting the wrong elections, because if you fight European elections, MEPs can't force a referendum. You have to do it domestically, and that's why UKIP is.
You know what? Sometimes with my children, if I don't want to hear the answer to the question because I know I'm not going to like it, I don't ask the question.
MEPs
and I
can't
think
force
that's
a referendum.
And I think that's exactly what we've got here. People don't want to ask the question.
You both want the same thing, but you're splitting the Eurosceptic in-out referendum vote.
We're not ever getting a How long have UKIP been around? Have we seen a referendum from them yet? We've just delivered another batch of 100,000 signatures to Parliament. We've got the largest mobile network of supporters, and we're fed up with waiting for these guys. We want a referendum, and we want it before the next general election, and that's what we're going to deliver.
But Katie, you can deliver as many signatures to Downing Street as you like. It's pie in the sky. The only way you're going to force a referendum is either by hurting a political party in the ballot box and fighting domestic elections.
In the ballot box, 2014, people will be able to go in there very clearly and mark, I want a referendum.
Katie said that one reason for doing this was to enable people to clearly indicate they wanted an in-out EU referendum. They can do that anyway by signing a pledge to vote for whichever candidate supports that policy. You should support that pledge. That's a great campaign and it has bipartisan support, not throw up a spoiler to UKIP, who we want to win in 2014.
Are you worried that this new lot are moving into your space?
Vaguely, but we've seen it all before. I think we had 7 anti-EU parties standing in the last European elections. We went on and finished second. It isn't really going to make that much of a difference.
When we're campaigning, I don't wish to join UKIP. When we're campaigning in the streets, we have queues of people waiting to sign up. We have queues of people wanting to join it, and we have queues of people. 6 out of 10 people say we want a referendum.
Why didn't you just mount a takeover of you? takeover of UKIP. You just need a double-decker bus full of people.
Because they
and you
haven't
can do
delivered.
it.
The bottom line is UKIP have not delivered. They talk a lot, we see them a lot, we hear them a lot, but
you
we
both
don't
want the
deliver.
same thing.
Where's
We
the
both want the
referendum?
same thing.
Where's the referendum that they've delivered to us in
They
the
haven't
time that
won
they've been
enough
around?
elections
We
together.
have
Well,
enough
indeed.
elections and it's taken them
And that's
20
why
years
we
to
need
get to
a
now.
new phase, a new group of people,
What
a
will
new
you
movement
achieve?
to do this.
How will you be able to do it more
Because
effectively than
we
UKIP?
can, unlike UKIP, we can have cross-party support. So it's not about what party you belong to. Cross-party, you can come and join this movement. I want a referendum. We demand a referendum, and it's time we let the people decide. It's not about career politicians. It's about the people.
What are you going to do about this?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, as I said before, we've seen it all before. We've had splinter groups in the past. We've had spoilers in the European elections. It hasn't really stopped UKIP because our brand is too big. We're polling around double digits at the moment. And all likelihood, we'll go on and we'll win 2014 European
Are there
elections.
going to be
wherever
many?
it stands on.
Are there going to be many Tories like you, Toby Young, saying that they want UKIP to come head of the polls in the European elections?
Probably not that unusual. If you look at the people who've defected from the Conservative Party since the last general election, quite a few of them have defected to UKIP, and it's precisely on that issue. That's the reason for their defecting. I mean, it depends what the Conservative Party's policy is about the EU going into the European elections in 2014. But if by that point Cameron isn't committed to an in-out EU referendum, then yes, I'll be voting UKIP.
And let's not forget, we have to be very careful with the referendum issue because there has to be checks and balances. Who writes the question? And obviously the money involved. I mean, I was out in Ireland for the last referendum earlier this year, and the Yes campaign outspent the No campaign by 20-fold because the EU was pouring in money. We cannot allow that to happen again because what will happen is a repeat of 1975.
All right. Paul Nuttall and Katie Hopkins, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.